My next guest was a student at St. Michael's College back in the 1980s, but he says he experienced sexual violence at the school at that time. Jean-Paul Bedard now advocates for sexual violence survivors, and he has taken the time to join me in studio right here in Toronto. I've heard you speak before. You speak from the heart, and you really just put it all out on the table. There is no holding back. But you've been doing that for a number of years. And then all of a sudden, this story breaks today. 6 boys arrested, allegations of sexual assault, gang sex assault, sexual assault with a weapon. What did all that bring back up for you?
Well, I mean, for any survivor of sexual violence, anytime this stuff is in the news, it feels like a piece of your soul dies. And I'm not just saying that lightly, it really does. As you said, I speak a lot about being a survivor of sexual violence, and I advocate for other survivors. And part of my story that I share has never been about my experience at St. Mike's, because even knowing what I know about sexual trauma, it's something that I've just internalized as maybe it wasn't that significant. Maybe it was part of boys will be boys, part of the ritual culture.
And maybe in the 80s we did say that, boys will be boys, but Jean-Paul, we're 40 years later.
Absolutely, and I mean, we know this with the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, that things that young men participate in can come back to haunt them. And I think there are probably a lot of older alumni from St. Mike's who are a little bit concerned right now, sitting at home or sitting in their jobs, because this stuff is going to come out. This has been happening for decades. You
say you haven't really talked about St. Mike's and the sexual violence that you experienced there as a student when you talk about in front of a group of people and help advocate for sexual violence survivors. Why not?
I think I just dismissed it. I think it's very similar to a lot of the women and men who are coming forward in this Me Too generation, where things that didn't seem to cross that really critical line, you just take on as not being soul destroying, but they are. When I first heard about these stories breaking in the paper earlier last week, it brought back all those memories of being at St. Mike's and being part of an elite football team and wanting to belong. And let's be honest here, sexual violence is all about power. It's a power imbalance, and that's what's happening here. You get 4 or 5 kids who have power over a newer member, a vulnerable person, and they're just exploiting that person, and that's what's going on here.
But then again, maybe they were in that position themselves. So how do you then turn around and years later repeat that behavior, knowing how humiliated, demoralized you may have felt?
Well, I think it's a multi-purpose response to this. We've got the police that are coming in. We're now hearing that St. Mike's is having an external audit of their culture. I think it's also telling that here I am, 52 years old, and I've been approached by a lot of media outlets over the last 72 hours to come in and talk about my experience 35 years ago. Where are the other men? You know what? And I think what's happening here is we have a culture where men don't feel comfortable being vulnerable. And the way that we change that is with our children in a school like St. Mike's, changing the culture where it's okay to come forward and talk about this stuff and not be bullied, not be stigmatized.
What is your message to students who are probably feeling a whole bunch of emotions, Jean-Paul, whether they were part of that or not, whether they heard about it, whether they laughed about it or cried about it? What's your message to them as they try to digest all of this?
Well, having gone through St. Mike's, I know that there's a lot of pressure and a lot of looking up to these elite athletes within the school. My one message would be that let's not put these athletes up on the pedestal. Let's put this young man or these young men who have been victimized, let's put them up on the pedestal. They're the ones who are going to have to be real warriors to carry the trauma that they've experienced. Those are the kids who need our support, not the person scoring 4 touchdowns. It's the person who has endured the unimaginable.
For the school, police did not say whether they felt there might have been some obligation the school did not fulfill. They did talk about the the fact that schools should report and officials should report. Whether this was a timely reporting is yet to be seen. But what is your reaction to the school waiting until the media got police involved in expulsions and then an investigation?
Well, I'd like to throw that question back out to the viewers. I would like to say, if you had a young boy who was currently in grade 8 and about to go into St. Mike's, would you feel comfortable putting that child in there? I would think that there would be a moment of conscience and reckoning where you would have to say, you don't feel comfortable. So I think that immediately when these types of incidents come to the fore, as a school or any kind of institution, you reach out to the police. They are the people who are trauma informed. They are the people who can respond immediately. Because as we all know, the first few hours, few days after someone has been impacted by sexual violence, it's a critical time. You don't want people who don't know what they're doing looking after it.
Do you think when you say, you know, let's show our support for those who have endured, do you think men of your age or older, younger, will actually come forward and say, I survived this as well, and now I'm willing to talk about it? Or is it still one of those things we just don't do?
I mean, there are men who come forward. There's not many of us. I mean, I came forward about 5 years ago with what happened to me.
What you're talking about
is this is outside of St. Mike's. Yes, this is prior to St. Mike's. But I came forward with the sexual violence that I had experienced because I had seen someone like Theo Fleury, people like Sheldon Kennedy coming forward and talking about it. And it gave me the courage that maybe I can be vulnerable, maybe I can talk about it. But I can remember, I mean, I've gotten to know Theo over the years, and he says, listen, I can't keep getting in front of this story. I don't have the energy for it. And I feel the same way. I feel like I'm lifting a lot of this. A lot of other men are lifting this weight. There's enough of us that we can share it. And we can make boys at St. Mike's feel accountable and feel that they are in a safe environment.
Final question for you. Any message to those who have been charged? Because I know you help people who have been in that awful, traumatic position of being violated. What about those who are alleged to have been violators?
Well, I think when you are traumatized, when you are hurt, you cause hurt. So I would address maybe what's going on in these kids' lives, right? What causes them to act in these pack mentalities? Let's get to that. Let's engage parents and administration. But what we don't want to do is close the doors of St. Mike's. We don't want to have the media pushed away. We want to dig in there and figure out what's going on.
Jean-Paul, I want to thank you, thank you for your time. The first time I heard you speak, I was moved by your honesty.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you coming in to talk, as you say, you know, decades later, about St. Michael's College and your experience there.
Well, thank you for having me in.